All right, let's dive into something, that we all know we should have, but often kind of push aside: building an emergency fund,
Hmm.
that financial safety net, right? For when life throws those curveballs, and it does. We're going
Hmm.
deep on this today, using the ultimate guide to building an emergency fund as our kind of a roadmap for this deep dive.
Okay.
And get this,
Yeah.
the guide cites a pretty shocking statistic. 40% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing.
Wow.
Yeah, 40%. That's a huge chunk of people caught off guard by even small financial hiccups.
It's a wake-up call for sure. Yeah, it really highlights why having that buffer, that financial buffer, is so crucial.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how do we build this thing, how much do we need, let's define what an emergency fund even is.
Sure.
What are we even talking about here?
At its core, an emergency fund is it's money that you set aside, right? Specifically for those unexpected events that life throws your way. Things that your regular budget, your everyday budget doesn't cover: a sudden medical bill, you need car repairs, maybe even job loss.
Yeah, all those things that you don't see coming, and suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I need to come up with this money. So
Exactly.
this is about creating a cushion so you're not left scrambling when these things pop up.
Yeah, it's about having the financial freedom, to be able to navigate those challenges without completely derailing your long-term financial goals, right? It's about
Yeah.
reducing stress during these already stressful times, right? And really importantly, I think avoiding those really tough decisions, like taking on high interest debt just to keep your head above water.
Right, because when you're in that situation, it's you're not thinking straight, you just need the money.
Yeah.
So you end up maybe making decisions that aren't good for you in the long run.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've established having this fund is important, but I think the next question is, how much do we actually need to save to feel secure? How much is enough?
Right. And that's where that common guideline of the 3 to 6 months of living expenses comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that this guide really emphasizes is that number, that 3 to 6 months, that's really just a starting point, okay?
Good.
It's really crucial to tailor that number to your specific situation.
Okay, so someone with a family, a mortgage, might need a larger cushion than, say, a single person renting an apartment.
Exactly. And even, factors like job security, your health even can play a role in determining how much you need to really truly feel secure.
So it's not about hitting some arbitrary number that someone tells you.
Yeah.
It's about assessing your own needs and your own circumstances.
Absolutely. And a helpful exercise I thought the guide suggests is to actually sit down and make a list, right? List out all of your essential monthly expenses, your rent, your mortgage, utilities, groceries, transportation, all those things. You add all those up, and then that gives you a really good starting point for calculating that 3 to 6 month cushion.
That makes it seem so much less daunting breaking it down like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, you don't have to build this entire fund overnight, right?
Right.
The guide emphasizes that even small, consistent contributions, they add up over time.
Okay, so starting small is key.
Absolutely. Even setting an initial goal, like just $500 or $1,000, that can be a huge psychological win.
Yeah, I could see how that would be motivating. Right. Because if you make it this huge, daunting goal, it's oh, I'll never get there. But if you start small, you're okay, I can do that.
Yeah, there's actually a psychological principle called the progress principle. And it basically says that even those small wins towards a goal, they create this sense of accomplishment and motivation, right?
Yeah.
Which in turn fuels further progress. It's about building that momentum.
It's like that snowball effect. That
Yeah.
initial success makes it easier to stick with it.
Exactly. And as you see that emergency fund growing, it becomes even more motivating to keep going, right?
Yeah, I know what some people are thinking, right? Because I think this all the time. Easier said than done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finding extra money in your budget, it can be a challenge. What does the guide recommend for folks who feel like they're already stretched thin?
Yeah, that's a really common concern. And I think the guide argues that it's not about being restrictive with your budget, right?
Okay.
It's about awareness.
Okay.
Often we have these areas where we're spending more than we realize, right?
Right.
Simply because we're not really paying close attention.
Okay, so step one, before we even start cutting things, is actually getting a handle on where our money is going.
Exactly. Even doing something as simple as tracking your spending for just 1 week, like write down every expense, every little thing. Once you see it all laid out, you might be surprised by the areas where you could easily cut back without even like really changing your lifestyle that much.
Yeah, it's about making conscious choices with our spending,
Exactly.
not just like mindlessly swiping the card.
And then on top of that, the guide also emphasizes the power of automating your savings.
Oh, yes. Automation, my secret weapon for making sure things actually get done.
Right. It takes the thought out of it.
Yeah.
This guide argues that automation, it isn't just convenient, it's crucial for building this habit.
Yeah.
Because it removes that emotional spending factor that can derail even the best of intentions.
Right, because if you don't see it, you don't have to think about it, then it's like it never happened.
Exactly. So when you set up an automatic transfer, right, from your checking to your dedicated emergency fund account, it's like you're paying yourself first.
I love that. Paying yourself first. It really like highlights the importance of prioritizing our own like financial well-being. Like we deserve to be financially secure.
Exactly. And the impact of consistency over time is incredible. The guide gives this great example. If you can manage to save just $50 a week,
Okay.
that's over $2,600 by the end of the year.
That's a serious chunk of change.
Yeah.
And I bet for a lot of people, finding that extra $50 a week is a lot less daunting than trying to come up with like, I don't know, $2,000 all at once.
Exactly. Those small, consistent actions,
Yeah.
they really do add up to big results over time.
Okay, so we've talked about how much to save. We've talked about some strategies for actually building that fund. But where's the best place to keep this money? I imagine we want it to be easily accessible, but also not too easy to dip into, right?
Right, exactly. It's like you want it accessible, but not too accessible.
Right, exactly.
The guide recommends considering a high-yield savings account.
Okay, I've heard good things about those. What makes them so well-suited for an emergency fund?
Yeah, so they offer a couple of key advantages. First and foremost, they offer that security, right, of knowing that your principal, that money that you put in, is safe. Unlike if you were to invest it in the stock market, right? Your money won't lose value overnight because of, market fluctuations and things like that.
Right. That peace of mind is crucial when it comes to money that you might need on short notice.
Exactly. And while you're not going to get rich from the interest earned on a high yield savings account, it's still a better option than letting your money just sit there in a traditional checking account where it's earning little to no interest.
So it's a good balance of accessibility and earning a little something extra while your money's just kind of like waiting for a true emergency. And speaking of which, the guide also cautions against putting your emergency fund into investments like stocks for that very reason, because the value can fluctuate.
Precisely. You need this money to be reliable,
Right.
which means minimizing risk.
Makes total sense. But we also have to acknowledge the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
The temptation to dip into those savings for things that aren't true emergencies. Like, I think we've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. It's so easy to do.
It's hard. You see that number going up and you're like, oh, but I could.
I could use that for this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a common pitfall for sure. One helpful tactic that the guide suggests is to actually label your emergency fund account as emergency only.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's like a little mental reminder every time you see it.
Right.
Do not touch.
It can be surprisingly effective because remember, you're playing the long game here. This is about building that long-term financial security, not about short-term gratification.
So true. It's about delaying that gratification for like a greater sense of security in the long run.
Exactly.
This has been so helpful already. We've covered so much ground, from like understanding what an emergency fund is and why it's important to like actually how much to save, and then some like really practical tips for making it happen. But before we wrap things up,
Okay.
I want to shift gears a bit.
Yeah.
And talk about some common pitfalls to avoid on this journey to financial security. Like, what are some things that people should be aware of as they're building their emergency fund?
Yeah.
What are some things to watch out for?
I think one pitfall that trips people up is like they start viewing their emergency fund as fun money.
Oh, yeah.
It was like those tempting dollars just sitting there,
Right.
ready to be spent.
Yeah, it's easy to justify dipping into it for like
Yeah.
a vacation or a new gadget,
Totally.
especially if you've been, working hard to build it up.
Yeah.
But you got to remember the whole point of this fund.
Yeah.
It's to provide that security for those unexpected events, not to fund like your discretionary spending. It's like the guide says discipline is key.
It really is. It's about really shifting your mindset from, oh, I can always earn more money, to I need to protect myself from these potential setbacks.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It's about a safety net, not a shopping spree fund.
Exactly. And another pitfall is not adjusting your emergency fund as your life changes, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah. What might have been sufficient, like when you were single and renting an apartment,
Yeah.
might not cut it if you get married, have kids, or buy a house, right? All those things change your expenses.
Totally. So it's not like a set it and forget it kind of thing. We need to be reevaluating periodically.
Precisely, yeah. Major life changes, salary increases, even if you have a shift in your overall financial goals, those should all trigger a reassessment of your emergency fund needs.
It's about staying adaptable,
Yeah,
making sure that safety net is always strong enough to catch us.
exactly. Now, another challenge that some folks run into is choosing the right type of account, right, for their emergency fund.
Okay.
Like we talked about high yield savings accounts.
Right.
Are there other options out there?
Yeah. Are there other things that people are like, should I be considering this?
Right. So the guide does mention money market accounts as another possibility, and they typically offer slightly higher interest rates than those traditional savings accounts, but a lot of times they come with higher minimum balance requirements.
Okay. So it's about weighing those pros and cons and kind of figuring out what works best for your situation.
Exactly. The key is to really do your research. Compare those different options. Choose an account that offers that good balance of accessibility, security, and that competitive interest rate.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of want to shift gears a bit and talk about the psychological benefits of having this emergency fund, right? We've talked about all the practical stuff, but I think there's a whole other layer here around peace of mind and just reducing financial anxiety in general.
Absolutely, yeah. Having that financial cushion, that safety net, can really have a profound impact on your overall well-being. It's about knowing you have that backup plan,
right?
Which can, lead to reduced stress. You sleep better at night.
Yeah.
Even strengthen your relationships.
That's so true. Yeah, because when you're stressed about money, it impacts every area of your life.
It bleeds into everything.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it really is it's about taking control of your financial life and feeling empowered to face whatever challenges come your way.
Exactly. And that sense of empowerment, that can extend to other areas of your life too. It's not just about the money.
Totally. So it's not just about the money itself, but the emotional and psychological freedom that comes with having that financial security.
Exactly. It's about freeing yourself from that constant worry of what if, right?
Yeah.
And focusing on the things that really matter.
This has been so insightful. We've covered so much ground.
Yeah.
From the practical steps of how do I actually make this happen to, like you said, the psychological benefits of having that financial security. Now, as we kind of wrap up our deep dive today,
okay,
I want to leave our listeners with some key takeaways and maybe a bit of inspiration to take action.
Sure.
What are your final thoughts? What do you hope people remember most from this conversation today?
Yeah, so much great information here. For anyone listening who's maybe a little overwhelmed, okay, how do I actually put this into practice? What would you say are the absolute most important things to remember about emergency funds? I think it really boils down to this. Building an emergency fund, it's less about, mastering some complicated financial strategies, and more about cultivating mindful money habits, right? Mm-hmm. Start small, automate those savings.
Yeah.
And most importantly, remember why you're doing it. It's for that peace of mind, right? It's for that freedom, that resilience that it brings to your life.
Beautifully said. This deep dive is really driven home the point that financial security, it's not about, amassing wealth. It's about creating a life where you're prepared for the unexpected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that feeling of preparedness, of having that safety net, that is incredibly empowering.
It's like you said earlier, right? It's about shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance, knowing hey, I've got this. I've got the resources to navigate whatever challenges come my way.
Exactly. Precise. And that shift, that can have a ripple effect into all areas of your life too.
Totally. Yeah. So to wrap things up, for anyone listening and thinking, okay, it's time, I need to prioritize this. What's one like concrete step like today that you can take to start building that cushion, that financial cushion?
You know, I'd say open that high yield savings account.
Yeah.
A lot of banks, you can even do it online now in minutes.
Right.
Do a little research, find one that has the terms that work for you and take that first step.
Love it.
Yeah,
Actionable advice, that's what we like. And for anyone listening who's already, started building their emergency fund, give yourselves a pat on the back.
absolutely.
Every dollar you save brings you closer to that feeling of financial peace of mind.
Absolutely. Celebrate those small wins, right?
Yeah.
And just remember, consistency is key.
Yes, consistency is key. Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive. It's been incredibly insightful.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this journey to financial wellness. Here's to a future where we're all prepared to face the unexpected with confidence and resilience,